Donald Trump has proven over and over again that he doesn't understand trade, that he doesn't really have a trade policy in place, and he says nonsensical things about what tariffs are going to accomplish. But at the same time, while he is getting a lot of pushback from members of his own party, he's arguing that they're the crazy ones. Take a look.
A lot of people, senators included, they have no idea what they're talking about when it comes to tariffs. They have absolutely no idea. When you have the money, when you have the product, when you have the thing that everybody wants, you're in a position to do very well with tariffs, and that's where we are. We're the piggy bank. The United States is the piggy bank. It has all the money that others want to take from us, but they're not taking it so easy anymore. It's a lot different. Our talks with China, a lot of interesting things are happening. We'll see what happens. In the meantime, we're getting 25% on $250 billion, and I could go up another at least $300 billion, and I'll do that at the right time.
So he accuses others of not knowing what they're talking about, and at the same time, he says, America has the product, they want the product, except that's not what's happening. There are manufacturers here in the United States who rely on the parts that they're importing from other countries in order to build whatever it is they're building to sell. But also he says this, and this is what stood out to me the most, we're getting 25%. So he's referring to the 25% in tariffs that he's slapping onto some Chinese products, and who pays for that? Who pays for that? Does he think that they're paying us an additional 25% to export their products to the United States? No, US manufacturers pay 25% on what they're importing from China. That's how the tariff works. In fact, you know what? If you don't believe me, why don't we hear from Larry Kudlow, Trump's own economic advisor?
If it's a tariff on goods coming into the country, the Chinese aren't paying, because the president says China doesn't. China, it pays the tariffs. They may suffer consequences, but it's US businesses and US consumers who pay, correct?
Yes, to some extent. Yeah, I don't disagree with that.
Wildest part about his little mini presser there is that he's the one who really doesn't understand it. And when you talk about trade, I feel like it is probably the most confusing thing as far as news to understand. The fact that the tariffs get assigned to the importer, that's the simple part. That's actually like the simplest part about all of it.
That's 101.
It is. And so he's actually stood there and said they don't know what they're talking about. Lie. Like it just went from, so am I crazy?
No, you're not crazy, he's crazy.
Great.
That's like saying, scientists don't know what they're talking about, climate change isn't real. Right? It's a similar statement.
It doesn't even make logical sense. We are going to charge them to be so that we can buy something from them. That's essentially, it doesn't make any sense.
Right.
It's a very crazy making scenario, right? Yeah. Especially for progressives. Because on one hand, they're listening to economists talk about this, right? And those economists are motivated by an economy that has pushed the 1% to stratospheric levels of wealth and left everyone behind. Right, so it's hard to trust anyone on this. And then you have Donald Trump, who is, as you said, and I think you nailed it a couple of times, he's wielding an incredibly blunt instrument to try to have an economic policy, a trade policy. And he's not able to do that. Tariffs won't do everything that he wants to do.
Right.
That's why when you look at the fact that, Elizabeth Warren, for instance, laid out an entire plan, and it's a comprehensive plan of what we need to do. Now, if we have borders, we have to have some sort of international trade plan, obviously.
Yes.
If we don't have borders, which we know more and more progressives are fighting for, then that's a different conversation too. But right now, any president who comes into place is gonna have some sort of trade plan. Trump just doesn't have one.
He doesn't have a trade plan, and he has decided, I'm gonna go past Congress, I'm gonna bypass any type of congressional legislation, and instead I'm going to argue that this is a national security issue, which it's not, in order to accomplish what I want to accomplish. And first of all, let me just say, Congress has on several occasions willy-nilly given up its own power to the president. The reason why the president can do that is because Congress has allowed him to do that, right? And so Trump has taken advantage. You have to consider the worst possible president when you're legislating and when you're willing to give away your power. But Congress, unfortunately, in the past hasn't done that. And secondly, what he's doing with Mexico and how he's threatening Mexico with tariffs if they don't stop the flow of migrants coming into the country is ridiculous, because he is trying to latch onto an economic policy in order to find a solution for a social issue. And look, Mexico is not responsible for what's going on, right? These migrants are coming in from other countries. They're coming in from El Salvador, Honduras, Guatemala. And so it is your failed immigration policies that are exacerbating the issue. But he doesn't understand that, doesn't want to take responsibility for that. And then I wanted to add one other thing. So manufacturing is really suffering right now under the Trump administration. Let's go to graphic 16. The US Manufacturing Purchasing Managers Index fell to its lowest level in April since October of 2016, and that's according to the Institute for Supply Management. The ISM survey also found that its factory employment index had fallen by 11% since October of 2016, and factory output fell to its lowest point since August of 2016. And also a separate survey by IHS Markit also found that May was the toughest month in nearly 10 years for American manufacturers. The reduced production will also be a further drag on the GDP. So on one hand, you have a president who cut taxes for the wealthy, which will cost the US economy $2 trillion over the next decade. You have stagnant wages. The tax cuts did not increase wages, and they did not create jobs. They certainly didn't create quality jobs. Most of them are part-time temporary jobs that do not pay enough. And then you have this issue of everything costing more. Right. Because of what he's doing with his trade policy, and people are gonna lose their jobs. If the manufacturing companies are being hit like this, yeah, they're gonna pass on costs to the US consumers, but they're also gonna shed jobs.
Right.
He is an idiot. I mean, I'm sorry, I know, like, let's not resort to name calling, but come on.
You're completely right, and you touched on something a second ago, like Mexico is not sending all of these people who are people and deserve to be treated like humans, but that's a whole other conversation that we have to have every single day here. But these people aren't all coming from Mexico, and even if they were, this is not the forum to handle this. And I was just reminded of something, that what he said in that interview just now, that was a lie. It wasn't confusion, because just 2 weeks ago, we had this conversation about China, and he said, these tariffs won't hurt you too bad because you can buy from American companies. So he knows how it works. And he said that, he admitted.
But again, has no real plan to promote American production, right? So there's the issue, I think, and that's what I think is really tangled, and it is such a complicated thing because people don't understand all the way that you know
how this
goods
works,
and services flow through the world, and how you know this is showing. What it's showing on a broader sense, if people really take time to dig in and understand this issue and say, okay, I want to understand tariffs, right? What they're going to see is the failure of capitalism.
Yes.
I mean, I really think that is we're going to see, okay, I understand now when more and more outflows from the system are coming through the stock market and less money is getting funneled in, and that money's not trickling down to workers. I understand how this system seems to have reached its maturation levels and is starting to flounder.
Exactly, and by the way, one of the reasons why he's experiencing some pushback from Republicans is because, would you look at that, the stock market is being impacted by this. I mean, that is the only time you ever hear Republicans go up in arms about anything. It's always about the bottom line. It's always about the profit motive. And if the stock market is being hit by this, that's what they care about the most. I mean, Americans have been losing their jobs overseas for decades, and they've only exploited that issue in their campaigns, but they've never done anything about it. They've never actually passed policy to protect the American worker. But in this case, oh no, those stock prices, they're getting hit. And we need to do something to push back against this disgusting president right now, and it's unacceptable.
The TYT Plus app is now available on iOS and Android. Download to get more TYT content at tyt.com/app.